mean, Shakur is my boy. That's like me and Shakur. We talk like every other day. So, I'm not ducking or dodging nobody. But that's not somebody I'm just in a rush to get in the ring with.
I mean, we can sit here and say what somebody should take or what somebody shouldn't take, but at the end of the day, I know what I'm worth.
Yeah.
I know who I am. I know, like, at the end of the day, you're not gonna tell me, oh, we're gonna offer 25% to Shakur, but we're gonna give this person this much, or we're gonna give this person this much. That's not even right. You only doing that because you don't want to fight me.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's an extension of, hey, he can say I gave the contract, you know what I mean, so I'm not scared or whatever you want to call it, but you know damn well he's not accepting that.
Yeah, it's basically a move for the public, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I pressed him out. So since I pressed him out, and nobody else pressed him out.
Send him some bottles at camp.
Nobody else went and pressed him out. I went and pressed him out. Yeah. So now he's trying to be petty and funny by sending me some little chump change that he ain't really trying.
Listen, before I even get into anything and really break down this video so you can make your decision, something Charles Barkley said on the Pivot podcast, something he said that I want you to understand about what's going on with YouTube. Don't take my words, take his words, because it's going to help you understand where I'm going. I asked you to watch the whole video in its entirety. And again, I welcome all feedback. You see something you don't like, say it with your chest out. Check it out.
I said, man, TV is so powerful. But the problem with television is we got so many guys on television who are full of shit. Like, I found out this when I was in Philadelphia. That's how long ago it was. A lot of guys, and they're friends of mine, we'd be playing golf, and I'd say, what are you going to talk about today on the radio? They're like, blah, 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 blah. I says, wait, you gonna talk about that? You don't believe that? He says, no, I don't believe that. But, Charles, these fools gonna call in and argue with me for 4 hours. Yeah. And I was like, what? He said, Charles, we're trying to get viewers. We ain't. And I said, so when I got my job, I said, I want to always be authentic and truthful, because if I say something, I want people to, even if they disagree, because I don't think I'm right all the time, but ain't nobody going to be able to say, Charles said this to get clicks or whatever. I'm never going to do that, especially being a brother, because it's going to be few and far between for us. So we have to really handle our business.
Welcome to BodyWork. Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to BodyWorkBoxing. Right now, I'm going to discuss some things surrounding around Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney, right? It's a lot to break down. You know, I gave you Charles, but what we're trying to figure out is, did Shakur Stevenson really price himself out? Or was this another LDBC, TBV slander campaign for another opponent against the great Devin Haney? Now, the reason why I wanted to play that Charles Barkley clip, courtesy of the Pivot Podcast, is because I get so much profound wisdom from watching that podcast. And the way that they talk about boxing is the way I think that we should talk about boxing. Or when I hear about a group of people that are designed or engineered, were created to talk about boxing on our behalf, right? That's the vein in which I think that we should talk about boxers and boxing. And on this channel, I start everything from inside the ring, what they do, because that's where I first meet them, from inside the ring with a skill set. And if the conversation leads us outside the ring, then we'll go there. This conversation definitely leads us outside the ring. And what Charles was basically saying is, you know, he learned in Philadelphia when he was, you know, venturing out and getting on TV and being with SportsCenter and calling games and things like that, when he was transitioning and doing those things and making his bones in that arena after his professional basketball career, he realized and ran into some people. He mentioned Rush Limbaugh at one point in time, saying, hey, man, and he said Rush Limbaugh basically said, hey, man, I don't really believe a lot of that stuff I be saying, man, but we need the views. We need, you know, we got to have people call in and argue. And what I'm seeing right now on YouTube is that's what it really is. These people do not believe half the things that they say on YouTube, especially when it comes to a fighter that may oppose a fighter that they actually vouch for and campaign for. There have been numerous slander campaigns against many boxers on the behalf of DHP, right? And a lot of these, it's coming out now that a lot of fans, when I go through comments and things like that, because this is the Pulse of Boxing, I gotta get it from here, almost like Batman with the sonar. Get everything in, absorb everything in, and pop out with a conclusion as to what's going on, so I can give the pulse on boxing. And the mass consensus from fans are that certain channels get paid, or they have incentive. Either they have personal relationships where they can go over to boxer's house or can get a chance to eat dinner. And it's starting to really seem like there is no extent to the amount of slander. You know, and not only slandering, not only the offense, we're talking about the defense as well. And the defense is never taking a look at the fighter that they represent or that they campaign for with as much scrutiny as they look at other fighters. You know, I always ask myself, what is a general? Well, a general is a leader of an army. You know, as a prior service military person, you know what I'm saying? General's supposed to be, you know, they can be heard and not seen, but a general, man, it's a symbol of power. It's a position to where it's almost like a judge, where you have to have an ability of discernment. You actually have to be able to handle somebody with kid gloves or order the hit to be able to get somebody taken out. You know, so you actually have to have a level of balance when it comes to actually being a general. And then you have lieutenants. Lieutenants, you know, they do whatever the generals say. You know, they're like echo chambers, do boys, but, you know, they have some power within an organization. You know, in the military, they actually have, but they are underlings to the general. Now, I don't know what kind of general. I don't know what kind of general would actually look and be real anxious to actually exploit the fact that an NBA basketball player got caught humping another player. That don't seem like heterosexual activity to me. You know, and what puzzles me is you got the general who does stuff like that, but then you got a lieutenant who dresses, you know, boxers up in drag. You know, he dresses boxers up in blackface. You know, real disrespectful. You know, and it's like, man, When I look at the chain of events surrounding Devin Haney and everybody that's been opposing to him, I see all the slander. You know, and it's kind of getting tiring. But my whole thing is this: if you are a general or you speak on sports news and you have all this influence and you have all this power, why would you spend your time as a heterosexual man doing homosexual activities? Why do you dress people up in drag to prove a point? Why do you dress grown men up in drag to prove a point? Why are you so concerned with who got caught humping who if you're not involved with that? See, a lot of people that's really a part of that community, they really just need to go ahead and come out and say that they're part of that community. You know what I'm saying? And get the respect of being a part of that community, because at least then you know that you're not in the closet. You know, it's a safe zone. Actually, you might get more preferential treatment if you go ahead and just come out. But I digress. Anyways, what I want to get into is, let's just take the Jalen Green situation, right? I'm not sure how you could go in and you can do all your homework and you can investigate and you can find that Jalen Green was caught doing something and you thought that it was such privileged information that you wanted to share it with your army. So I said, in the vein of seeing the flaw in everybody else and not seeing the flaw in you and your own kind, I said, well, dang, how come I never see or hear anything about Devin? And I came across this one thing and I said, hey, wouldn't a general who specializes in update everybody about, you know, whatever activity that they do in the bedroom, like, wouldn't they be more concerned with the images of Puffy and Devin and the thought of rituals where 80,000 people are actually watching something like that and being involved? But you don't see that. You don't see that. You don't call that out. It's almost just like when Wilder got caught twerking in camera. They was, oh man, if you want to criticize what another man does in the privacy of his own home, but Tank, you know, have a handbag that's considered a purse, you say something. Nobody really said nothing about the shirt that Shakur have, but like, that's fashion things. Like, you know, most of the fashion designers are part of that culture, so it comes along with the territory where these guys have to do it. Do I agree with it? No. Is that a Baltimore thing? No. Is that a New Jersey thing? No. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it was a Dennis Rodman thing. I don't know who said where that purse. That's not what, but it's not anything to broadcast. Also, broadcasting that somebody got put in jail over and over again, and, you know, just using somebody's name over and over again to the point where this lieutenant who says that he's a Tank fan boycotted the last fight. He boycotted the fight, but had Devin Haney fought Ryan Garcia, he would have bought the fight. So they contradict themselves every other time. They have so much to say about everybody else. They go so deep in on everybody else, and they part of the pause culture. You know, just like the thumbnail when they said, you know, about Bud and Tank, and he said, you know, come touch it with a pause. Like, that's not the lieutenant. He has something that says morning grind. Like, think about it, morning grind. What? That's a pretty peculiar name, if you ask me. But these guys never see the fact that they are subliminally a part of that culture. They just don't realize it, and they take it out on these other boxers. But I want to stick to Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson, and whether or not Shakur Stevenson really priced himself out, or if it's more DHP slander. So let's talk about it. For one, Shakur Stevenson did not price himself out. Church had already came out and told us over a year ago that once Devin Haney got done with that fight, he's moving up to 140. He said it in his stands, and pretty much since that's the DHP mascot, hadn't heard much from him lately. But since he said that, that's pretty much reigning supreme. Bill Haney came out and said, no, there'll be no other champion at 35, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then what happened was a lot of people put a lot of pressure on Shakur Stevenson. Yes, he did miss weight. Yes, that was irresponsible. But we have seen cases like Gary Russell, who went ahead and made that weight. We've seen cases where everybody speculate where Errol Spence went into that fight, forged ahead and went ahead and fought that fight against Bud. So it was Lomachenko and Bud. It was Spence and Gary Russell, where they both forged through and fought those fights, even though they were struggling with weight issues. And we see the results of those fights. Now, whether or not they were, you know, depleted or not, or whether that would have, you know, influenced, you know, the outcome of the fight, we don't know, because the outcome was the outcome. They both got beat. by those champions, right? But Shakur realized that, hey, I can't make the weight, so he missed the weight. He missed an opportunity. He missed an opportunity to be able to take the belt that he currently had and use that as leverage to latch on to the next weight class above, which was 135. That does not demean, that does not besmirch, that does not wipe away the fact that the young man was a silver medalist in the Olympics and that he is a 2-division champion and a unified champion at 130. That doesn't, with names on his resume, because now everybody's being discounted as far as names, and this is a pattern. And I'm going to show you a pattern from Teofimo Lopez, Tank Davis, Gary Russell Jr. You could even throw in Rolly, even though I didn't prepare anything for Rolly, but you could throw in Rolly. All of these fighters, now Shakur, and then it's going to be Regis. You can throw in all of these fighters, where at the time where it might have been a potential showdown between them and the Lord Devin Haney, they have always gotten slander. And where did this slander come from? This Hippos Den boxing community is where this slander comes from. So let's go ahead and address it. Let's address this, right? Because Shakur said, hey, he basically broke a silent agreement. That's really what everybody, that's the elephant in the room that nobody really want to talk about. It came out on the Mob channel, on H Money Mob channel, when they had that video virtual press conference with Bill and Dev against Shakur. And I thought Shakur should have had, management representation during that time, but he didn't, and he chose to talk to Bill. And in that conversation, it came out that they basically had a silent agreement that basically whenever Devin moves up, Shakur will move up. Well, Shakur couldn't make weight anymore. He goes to 135. He's saying he want all the smoke. He was not going to come to 135 and just be an underling just running around and conceding that he's not the creme de la creme. His first fight up, he fought Yoshino. Did anybody really know him? No. But if you were a boxing fan, you could have done your research and figured out who he was and what he was able to do and how he stopped Nakatani and things like that. But the style was the perfect style for Shakur. Shakur wound up stopping him. That's not the point. So he does have a body at 135. But that does not erase the legacy that he has at 26, 30, and what he did in the Olympics as far as his pedigree, his tenure, his skill set. So they discount him at 135. He's running around saying, so he says, look, after this fight, he says, I want to fight Devin Haney. Bill and them get upset. Why? Because at that point in time is when Shakur broke the silent agreement. The silent agreement was that they would move up, lock and step, much like I thought the agreement was going to be for Spence, Mel, and Maul to all move up, lock and step. That's just my personal theory that I had. I thought they were going to do it, and continue their reign and everything like that. Some opportunity presenting himself, and Jamel, he's going up to fight Canelo. Maul, he's probably going to fight. Word on the street is going to be Caleb Plant, and Earl and Bud got unfinished business. But he's going to 154 because that's what the rematch called for. Anyway, I think that was a silent agreement. At that point, they got perturbed. And they said, you know what, dang, man, Shakur broke the rules. They got real frustrated because basically Shakur let the cat out the bag. He said, look, man, friend or no friend. And it's real crazy because when you talk about boxing, right, for the longest time, everybody, even big channels like Fanon, they was actually campaigning for Earl to fight Jermel and all this, in camp. In camp fighters who are also friends, who work and train together, always forcing the envelope on that. Even wanting to force the envelope between Jermel and Jamal Charlo, wanting the twins to fight. Yes, you have more energy for that than you actually have for Shakur to fight Devin. Oh, because, man, they had sleepovers together and I drove him to all of that. Shakur said, look, man, this is different. He even, Tank and them camp even feel like Shakur kind of turned the different, went a different way as far as their history, because if my memory serves me correct, Tank and Shakur, they're a lot closer. Their camps know each other and they were actually cool. But Tank said, hey, man, saying just like everybody else, hey, ain't no friend. That's just like, I don't know how the Keyshawn and Shakur thing gonna work, but they say they'll never fight. They're brothers and all, but you'll have firm pressure for that. But in a fight where Shakur finally arrives at 135 and he wants to have the belts, you have Devin saying, that's not a fight that I'm in a rush to make. So then after that, he felt the pressure, this and that. Shakur said some things. that he didn't really, he don't think that Devin really won the fight. He had a stretched a little bit wide for Loma initially, and then he came back and he watched it again. He said, you know what, I gotta give Devin a little bit more credit, but I still think Loma won the fight. And the Hippos Den boxing community got real upset. They got extremely upset. They started slandering Shakur more. They slandered him when he came on and said he was part Puerto Rican for acknowledging his father's heritage as being Puerto Rican. Never denied his grandfather Wally. You know, and he never turned his back on his black fan, but because he donned the Puerto Rican flag, they tried to blackball him. They tried to blackball a lot of people. Like they tried to blackball Chris Colbert the time when he said the comments about Deontay Wilder. They've been blackballing the Charlos. Maul, they just jump on him because he's having, you know, mental health issues, and they never give Mel the credit that he deserved. But that's just how it goes. So now the slander comes, and they're saying, oh man, and then, you know, so it comes down to where Devin, you know, pretty much sends a contract to Shakur for a mysterious 25%, which we fast forward to this week where somebody give a hypothetical, they throw out an $8 million number, the internet goes crazy and wild and they run with this number. That was just a hypothetical. I think it went over a lot of people's heads and what Prince was actually saying when he said the 8, because he came back and said, well, this year is 8, next year to be 16. I think the whole point was whatever it is down, it'll be double next year. And that's the point. Everybody just wanted to block it in the 8, but they put themselves in a quandary when they did that, because if they said that Shakur denied 8, which is a fourth of what he would get, and so Devin was going to get 3/4 of what it was, then that means that the whole pot was $32 million, and Devin Haney was standing to gain $24 million, which we know is bullcrap. You know what I'm saying? It's another channel that did an excellent presentation on it, even cooked somebody on the channel and really highlighted that. But because they threw out that 8 number, because they always take and run off with extremes, that's just like them saying that, okay, well, Shakur says, look, we're going to push the WBC, we're going to push the mandatory. So we're going to take it to purse bid, and we're going to see what's going on, and we're going to see, you know, because I know my worth. They got outraged. Oh, man, he ducked. Why didn't he take the offers? When in business, we all know it's a very popular saying that says you never take the first offer. So if the first offer is some BS, then we already know you really don't want to fight. They're not going to acknowledge that. I've heard several of these major channels say that, yeah, everybody knows you never take the first offer. You always negotiate. They do the same thing to Thurman and Garcia when they wanted to fight Bud, and they say that they priced themselves out. But there was no negotiation, and you know that people are never going to take the first fight. Danny Garcia said, I don't get out of my bed for less than XYZ. I don't pocket watch. I'm just watching these guys as they watch pockets while they talk about not pocket watching. You did. So that's what brings me to this conversation. So he says, look, I'm going to go the sanctioning body route because I'm not sure what they're going to give me. They could give me up to 50%, but I'm more than likely, based on my track record and what happened with him and Jermell Charlo, with him and Jamel Herring, when they averaged his last 3 paydays and then came up with a number that was more beneficial to his pockets and his family, since he do get hit in the head, they came up with a number and the fight went on. They moved the goalpost to talk about how he's been A-side and everybody else to the fight, not really garnering any respect through the process, which is the business of boxing, because everybody likes to say the business of boxing, by going through the sanctioning body and saying, hey, look, I want to push forward ahead because I am the mandatory. Well, Devin had to relinquish the belt. The belt is up for grabs, and now it's up for the WBC. A lot of people are saying that the fight between Frank Martin and him have to, you know, go through, and they're in the negotiation process, however it's going to happen. But when negotiations happen and Shakur says, you know what, I'm going to take this to purse bid, I'm not going to take that offer. I don't think he really, you know, that offer is just basically letting me know he don't want to do it. Plus the fact we've been living with the excuse that he can't make weight for the last 2.5 years. At least almost 3 years he's been talking about this. Even though T.O. never got no credit for saying the same thing, because they're young boys, they're getting bigger, they want to move, which is fine. It would have been fine had you just said, hey, I can't make the weight anymore, I'm going to move up. Much like what Earl saying, I can't really make the weight no more. He stood for that Bud fight, to make that Bud fight, which we thought Devin was going to do for Tank, but he ran the 140. And everybody wants to slander Shakur Stevenson, which he's really just doing what he has in his right as a person in business and in the business of boxing, to take it to the sanctioning bodies and let them dictate what it was. Nobody knows it'll be 50%. But the rumor is, in the narrative or the lie that everybody running with, is that Shakur priced himself out because he wanted 50%. Give me 50%. I'm giving you undisputed. I had to take this. All this other stuff where Devin really got a flat fee. Nobody knows what the 25% was. The $8 million was thrown out there as an example and everybody running with it. Why? Because it's convenient to the narrative. But that does not stop these guys from continuing to go ahead and on Shakur Stevenson, just like they do everybody else. Now, I can run down the hate, but let's start off with Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. was talking smack to Bud, saying that he'll do this and he'll do that. Enters Devin Haney into the conversation. Said, oh man, I want that smoke. I'll take it. I'll do this. I'll do this. They went back and forth. Bill ignored Gary Russell Jr., didn't get back to him. They came back to the table. He tried to offer Gary Russell. At that time, it would have been the biggest, payday he had up until that point. He was the longest reigning champion at 126. He was going to be moving up 2 weight classes to 135, and he had reigned for 352 days. I think he reigned for 6 years and 352 days. Longest reigning champion, 126. So they said, hey, we're going to give you your biggest offer. Plus, on the back end, if you win, we're going to all this backhanded, underhanded stuff that Bill say he would do after the fight. I'll give you another 500. It would have equated to Gary Russell's biggest payday at that time. But they failed to mention that they actually wanted Gary Russell to sign a 3-fight deal. And we look at the position that Regis is in right now, where he already signed the contract and he's in limbo. But this has happened several times. It's just like this last negotiation with Lomachenko. Lomachenko was all ready to go, but Devin Haney was actually vying for more concessions. They'll never tell you that. They'll never bring it up. Why? Because it's not conducive to make their fighter look good. Nevertheless, Gary Russell said, no, I just want to hit it and quit it. I want to be one off. I want to do a fight with you and I'm going to be one off. I don't want to be under the DHP banner. I don't want you to get paid for 2 more fights to fight me. I just want to whoop you and then go on about my business. They slandered Gary Russell Jr. Let's move on to Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez hops out of a series tournament, right? Everybody, people start popping out. Teofimo Lopez and his father figured out that Lomachenko was not going to fight the winner of that tournament. Lomachenko actually wanted the other belt. So Teofimo Lopez hops out of the tournament. He goes and get a belt from Lomachenko, he goes and get a belt from a little dude overseas. He go get his belt, and then they started getting in talks. Loma says, welcome to my club. After he beat Comey, knocked him out, he said, welcome to my club. So they start negotiating. Well, the WBC makes a blunder by going ahead and emailing Devin Haney a belt, which he would have never had, because at the point in time, all the belts would have resided between Teofimo Lopez and Lomachenko. So they go ahead and fight. Teofimo Lopez actually beats Lomachenko, who had the franchise belt, which is an elevation of the WBC. And then they give Devin Haney the World Championship WBC belt. That's how he got the belt. Teofimo, for whatever reason, fight get pushed back 3 times. Finally fight Kambosos. Have a bad night. Kambosos gets the belt. At this point, Devin Haney's licking his chops. He's going after Kambosos. Mind you, there was never any real beef between him and Kambosos. It's public record, there was never any real beef between them. All of a sudden, it's all this, oh man, you turned, you fake. They start building up all this stuff about Kambosos. He talked smack just like everybody else, but all this beef started happening. And Devin Haney goes over there, he does his thing. Unanimous decision. He had to do it again. But that was the only offer that was on the table at the time. Because Kambosos wanted to fight Tank with Lomachenko. He knew that would be the money fight. Tank said, hey, I'll fight you, but you can keep those belts. Then they say, oh man, when Devin got all the belts, they don't matter. But they pick, choose, and refuse what they actually want to acknowledge. Tank never wanted to fight for the belt. Tank wanted to fight the man, but he didn't want to fight for the belts. Why? Because of Floyd's influence. And the 12% that he have to pay for each one of them belts that you hold. So Tank became the money man. Over his time, he worked up all the time. Tank has been the always, it's like, all right, I got beef with this person. Let's go back and basically take a dump on Tank. I got beef with this person, let's go back and take a dump on Tank. And all this time, Bill Haney's going around sending out mug shots of Tank, saying he was glad when he got arrested, trolling Coach Calvin, saying that he broke and this and this, that, all out of pocket. The Hippos Den boxing community never pulled Bill to the side and say, hey man, that's not cool, man. Don't you know we got people that do shows on prison stories and this and that, and nobody ever pulled his coattail. Nobody said, hey man, that's not right. That's not becoming of a father, but yet they'll talk about the fatherless. They'll talk about the fathers and how you only feel this way because you don't have a father. But it's crazy how those that do have a father spend their time online putting people in drag and also looking to update their fans or their viewers about people in professional sports who do gay activities. Everybody but their own. When Devin Haney was caught in that pool with P. Diddy, shirts off at one of them parties. But I digress. So, you get the Tank slander. That's been ongoing all the time. Oh man, Devin said he would drop the belts to fight Tank. He never dropped the belts. Devin also said in that December when Tank wound up fighting Rolly, he also said that he would take that fight, that last minute fight with Tank. Because it was rumblings that he was going to fight Rolly. Yeah, it was rumblings that he was going to fight Rolly. That didn't happen. He got brought up on charges or something like that. So that fight fell through. When it got cleared, the fight with Tank and Rolly had came about, and he said he would have took it, which was a lie. Always saying he would do something and never do it. That's the whole problem. When it comes to the Teofimo Lopez slander, they say, oh man, he priced himself out. He wanted $20 million, this and that. He is on record saying some gaudy numbers, but that's mainly because Teofimo Lopez never got paid the going rate for what he was actually doing. A lot of people try to take away from Teofimo Lopez's resume, and his legacy, but the guy has a pretty good resume. If you look at all the fighters and what he was capable of doing, and when he shined in the big fights, he had one blunder one bad night against Kambosos that wiped it all the way, but that didn't stop the Teofimo Lopez slander. Now, since then, Teofimo Lopez has said some things that made me hop off the fan bandwagon. You know what I'm saying? Because I was a Teofimo Lopez fan. I still like what he do inside the ring. I just cannot support a fighter who says and does some of the things that he actually do. So I do wish the young man well. I know that he'll mature, and when I hear some things from him that I actually like, I'll actually continue to support him. But there was much slander with Teo. There was much slander with Kambosos. There was much slander with Tank. There was much slander with Gary Russell Jr. And all these guys, these Beehive guys, these Devin Haney guys, and these Bill Haney people, and when you talk about the boxing mouth and all the things, they'll come on and let Michelle Rivera come out and call Tank the B word. Right after trying to defend and trying to be a mediator between why Devin and Shakur can't fight right now. I can't make this up. But like Charles Barkley said, man, they need the clicks. They need the likes. They need the views. Devin Haney never plans on coming back down in 135. A lot of the fans are going to be looking at him saying, hey, well, even if he do come down there, because I guess you can say he reignited this ceremonial weigh-in, which I didn't care for the ceremonial weigh-in when Bud and Spence weighed in either. But the first time I saw it of recent history was when Devin Haney had the ceremonial weigh-in, but we didn't even get a chance to see what he looked like. There was some footage that broke after the weigh-in where, he was in a hoodie, looking all weak, but he started that. So there was never any intention on Devin Haney to stay at 135. There was never any intention on him actually fighting Tank. They did not aggressively pursue anything. You could see him aggressively pursuing Eddie Hearn by saying, hey, if you look, I already done reached out to Eddie and I called him. Where was the whole message where I called Al or I called anybody over there? Why? Because they had a silent agreement. They want these fights to build. The suits are saying Devin Haney's not ready. That's also Floyd's godson. I don't know why everybody not talking about the elephant in the room and the fact that all these guys had a silent agreement. So all the salaciousness, all of these thumbnails, all of these reports, all of the slander that they're doing to these other boxers in the defense of Devin Haney is all in vain because they all had a silent agreement. They know that those fights aren't ready. Shakur said, you know what? Those fights might not be ready, but you're standing in my way to get a belt. Tank just happened to not care about belts. He want the money. And if the suits won't make the money, the people that give the budget and everything, because we got to consider the fact that a lot of people, it's crazy how a lot of the hippos in boxing community, when it came down to Bud and Spence negotiation, they said, oh man, Bud is a man without no land. He can't do this and the hedge fund this and that. They do the, Devin is in the same position. He have his own promotional company, but so he get to get in the boardroom and see the real numbers and all that, but he's a man without a land either. Where was the money coming from? It was gonna come from the network. But they try to say that Bob and him, because it was never in the plans. It was never in the plans. Bob said that Devin was gonna fight Kambosos, do his rematch, and then fight Loma. It was not in the plans for Shakur, because I'm thinking behind closed doors, they already knew that Devin Haney was moving up to 140. Shakur and Bill and them, they had pretty much said it. So when we hear this tape come out, right? The tape come out, the recording come out, and you hear Bill saying that, oh man, Shakur always was able to get in on Devin, man. Like, it got to the point to where if you got anything in on Shakur, man, it was a good day. We looked at it like a good day. But nah, man, we told you, man. If it ever got higher than 30, then we gonna go up to 40, man. Nah, it's not like that. He was the big homie, man. They friend. Like, just basically all this, whatever. And the LDBC took more offense and called Shakur a snake. Well, if Shakur's a snake, what is Devin? And I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna go ahead and play this because this is June of last year, going into the Kambosos fight. So listen to this, because if Shakur's a snake, then Devin's a rat.
The whole rat discussion and this, like, it's the pot calling each other black. Devin was giving information to George Kambosos about T.O., his fellow countryman, about how he was going through marital problems and how he can't see his son. George Kambosos used that information and the fact that Devin was providing that information to stir up some stuff inside the camp. It's almost like he took a whack at the bee's nest and it was like mass hysteria.
Okay then. So that lets you know right there that if you're going to give a foreigner information, which I believe that a lot of that information that Kambosos used, knowing the mental state of T.O., some of the things he said, some of the triggers he might have been able to ignite. Because we don't know everything. We catch what we can catch in front of the camera, but we don't know what's being said behind closed doors. But we do know that Devin Haney was feeding Kambosos, a foreigner in Australia, information against his fellow countrymen. But all the patriotism, but no, that's fine. But this same general who's leading this campaign, calling Shakur this and this and that, when it come to Jalen Green, he didn't find that, since one of his homeboys recorded that video and put it out, he didn't find that to be snake behavior. No, why? Because he needed the likes, clicks, and views. It didn't matter if it was GAY. It didn't matter if it was GAY. It didn't matter if, his homeboy went behind Jalen Green's back and put that footage out. He didn't care. He got to feed his fans. But it makes you look bad. It makes you look like a hypocrite. It makes you look like if anybody getting in your way, standing in your way when it comes to Devin Haney and the things that he do, if anybody's standing in your way, you're going to slander him. You're going to create echo chambers to actually slander anybody that's on the opposite side of Devin Haney. And then you're going to actually take a dump on everybody who listen to you by telling them, oh man, only people that get offended about that is people without fathers. I didn't hear anything when Bill was talking about Tank's mom and how she from the ghetto and all this, amongst the things that he said about Coach Cal. Nobody ever pulled Bill's coach. Nobody ever checked him. But then when you hear this lieutenant, when you butt fart tuberculosis, when you hear him talk about it, man, yeah, you heard him, man. Yeah, he said, man, your father's a B, and then he said, man, F your mother. You see all the energy he get? That's a man that got a problem with women. It's a man that got a problem with women. That's a man that they see no flaw. They'll come out and do what my favorites aren't perfect. And they don't tell you anything that the public can see, that they can see, but it's not going to be until they've had enough to where they're going to actually start coming down on Devin, much like they doing Clarissa Shields, because they won the Clarissa Shields bandwagon for a long time. And I think her whole pressing Keith Thurman finally got him. And that's why I tell Bill and Dev, it's like, yeah, y'all are very political, man. Bill might be mayor of somewhere, somehow, at some point in time. But it's going to come a point in time where Bill and Dev don't do something that they want to do, and they're going to turn. One of their big leaders already said, hey, I'm up out of here. You know what I'm saying? He said that he's going to find a quote-unquote new hustle. I'm going to let you read between the lines. But what other hustle? Like, is this a hustle? Yes, it's a hustle for them guys, man. It's all about the likes, clicks, and the views. So they're going to slander and continue to slander anybody, and it's never Devin's fault, and he can't do no wrong, and they can lie, and they can, you know, they basically can slander and do all these things to everybody else. But the minute somebody say something about Devin, he like that badass little young man, that nephew that can't nobody talk. You better not put your hand. I'll say that all the time. Devin's only saving grace to me. The thing that I respect the most right now, and why I had to stop riding Devin Haney's back, is because he actually chose to fight Regis Program. He is number one at 140. That's grown man activity, and that's what I stand on. But I think these guys should just go ahead and call a spade, call balls and strikes, like one of their echo chambers always say. I'll call balls and strikes, even though he don't. Because he slandered Coach Calvin when he didn't even need to slander Coach Calvin. So I wish they would just call balls and strikes. Admit that these guys had a silent agreement. They all talk. They're the boxers. They know what's going on. And when you're dealing with PBC, we know a lot of times how they plan it. You know your next 3 fights. You know what's going on. And so I wish everybody would just say, look, man, we doing like we did with Bud and Spence, and we're just popping popcorn right now. We're just building the fight. But to mislead people, to get their money and to rile everybody up, man, I think we need to have more class about how we talk about it. And fights don't have to be built that way. What do you think about it? I know for sure Shakur did not price himself out. It's not pound for pound behavior to say, oh no, that's not a fight that I'm in a rush to make. And then you send a low ball offer and then dash up to 140 after saying you would be here all year. You got to be able to live with yourself as a viewer, as an audience, as a fan. You got to be able to call everything right down the middle. Yeah, you can like and love what Devin Haney's doing as far as legacy. It's hard to knock it. He is the one that's going all after the legacy. But Shakur's going after legacy, and Tank has his own idea of what legacy is. He also has people that have, you know, an interest, an invested interest in him. And whenever you're a man with a land, i.e. a network and everything like that, they kind of have a say in what happens and when it goes on. I wish we would act like that and stop playing the games, man. But somebody need to say it. I say that silence is consent, and I would love to hear your feedback on this. What do you think? Because it's plain as day to me. Anyways, thanks for everybody who tuned in here with Bodywork Boxing. Well, we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.